So as a review for converting to standard form. So right now that's your standard form is your x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals radius squared. And I can't call out enough, radius squared is not your radius, it is the length of the radius, and then you square it. So when you see it in standard form, that number is not the length of the radius. So just be very careful not to jump on that number super quick. I'm sorry for the brightness change. So number one, you're going to group your x's and y's. So I have an x and an x. So I'm going to have x squared plus 8x. And then I'm going to put my y's together, which is my y squared minus 2y. And then for the moment, we're going to leave that constant right there if we're following these steps religiously. Then we're going to move the constant to the other side. So the 64 is going to become a positive 64 on the other side. So that's a remembrance back to like math 1. Make sure you remember that when it switches sides, you have to do the opposite. So y squared minus 2y. And that's going to be equal a positive 64. That positive 64. Because it switched sides. Now we're going to add our blanks. You're going to want to skip this part. I highly recommend not doing that, because if you do, you are going to forget about some of these spots, and you're going to skip steps because there's just so many steps in this case. And so to stay completely invested in the problem, these back two are the most important, because that's where most people forget, me included. So you're going to have two blanks on the other side with your 64, one blank over there for each set for the x and for the y's. Complete the square. So we're going to take each of those as if they were just individual quadratics. And I'm going to take my b value, which is going to be 8 here. So 8 divided by 2, which is going to give me 4. I'm going to square it. It's going to give me 16. So then I'm going to put a 16 with my x's on both sides. So if I do a 16 on this side, I have to do a 16 on that side. Then for my y's, we're going to take our b value, so negative 2 divided by 2, which is going to be a negative 1. Then we're going to square it. Make sure to put this in the calculator with parentheses, or it's going to give you the wrong answer. So we're going to add a positive 1 to both sides. Now, factor and add. So we're going to factor each one of these because, like I said, this is a quadratic, this is a quadratic, and then we're going to add everything at the end together. Cheat a little bit if you, or a cheat if you should choose to use it. Our b value right here is the factor. So it's going to be x plus 4 squared, because 4 times 4 gives me 16, and 4 plus 4 gives me 8. Now, that is getting around doing a lot of the factoring of math, but it's right there, and I'm a big fan of making life easier. It's right there. So x plus 4, and then we're going to do plus, because it's x minus h normally, plus y, again, it's right here, minus 1, because negative 1 times negative 1 gives me a positive 1. Negative 1 plus negative 1 gives me that negative 2. These squareds, don't leave those off either. That's another thing where a big mistake happens because you just get going too fast. 64 plus 16 is going to give me 80 plus 1. So that means 81. Now it is in standard form. From here, they could ask you what's your radius. And that's going to be a negative 4, positive 1. Because remember, it's x minus h, y minus k. So this became a plus because a negative was put in its place. This stays a minus because a positive was put in that place. I'm sorry, that's the center. Look at me getting excited. Center is negative 4, 1. Our radius is the square root of 81, because 81 is actually radius squared. So if we want the radius, that's going to be 9, because it's the square root of 81. And then just a question to throw it off, what's the diameter? Now remember, diameter is radius times 2, not radius times itself, so not 81. So the diameter in this case would be 18. Because sometimes they won't ask for the radius, they'll actually ask for the diameter, and that's just checking to make sure that you understand and remember all the small things. All right, so we'll do one more. So we're going to group our x's and y's. So I have an x and x squared plus 24x, and I'm going to go ahead and put in a blank. Then I'm going to group my y's, y squared plus 6y blank. And I'm going to go ahead and move. So for those of you who don't like writing everything out, like individual 5 steps, I like to do this much kind of by itself. That 137 was positive, so now it becomes a negative 137. Don't forget your 2 blanks on this side as well. I'm telling you, trust me, that's where you'll mess up. First and foremost, after you get the process going good. So now we're already down to step 4, so we combined step 1, 2, and 3 all in one. Group your X's, put in your blanks. Group your Y's, put in your blank. Move the constant so it's by itself on the right-hand side. Blank, blank. And if it moves to the left-hand side, that's fine. But just the constant has to be by itself and your variables are on the same side. So now we're going to complete the square. So for that means we're going to take our B value. 24 divided by 2 equals 12. Square it. It's going to be 12 times 12 is 144. And so we're going to put 144. It's a positive 144. Positive 144 in our purple ones. And if you have multiple colors, it's very helpful because then you know where you messed up if you left something out. So we're going to do the same thing for y. So 6 divided by 2, b value divided by 2 gives me 3. Then we square it is 9. And the reason I write this out instead of just 6 divided by 2 squared equals 9 is because remember our cheat that I showed you just above? I want to see this number because it keeps me from having to factor. And most of us are not super strong at factoring. So taking that second to write that down, I already know now that this is x plus 12 squared plus y plus 3 squared equals, and oops, I jumped ahead. So don't forget to add your 9s to both sides. And then you're going to add the far end, so negative 137 plus 9 plus 144, and you get 16. And that 16 again came from the sum of all of these numbers. So if you leave off a blank, it significantly changes that last number. So then our center is negative 12, negative 3. And our radius is the square root of 16, which is 4. Because 4 times 4 gives me 16. And in that case also, just as a full circle, our diameter is 8. All right, so that's your standard form. Hopefully you remember that from last week.